Welcome to Down the Garden Path. I'm your host, Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and plant lover. I enjoy discussing down-to-earth tips and advice to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. And I also aim to bring you interesting and relevant topics to educate you all about the landscaping and horticultural industry. Welcome to Down the Garden Path, and thank you for joining me once again after a short hiatus this summer, but I'm happy to be back, and I'm very excited to be introducing you to ROMEX. And I have my guest, David Maxwell from ROMEX, here today to talk about a lot of different things, different products, but all about permeable products, which I'm excited about. So ROMEX North America is the exclusive supplier of the German-engineered ROMEX hardscape solutions product line throughout North America. They provide not only the products, but expert advice, planning, estimates, installer training, and world-class customer service. David has been in sales since he graduated from Mount Allison with over 10 years experience in construction sales, and his strong knowledge of landscaping construction with his experience in green roofs and hardscapes. We can do a whole show about green roofs too, maybe, David.
There we
So
go.
welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. That was a very nice welcome.
Well, you send me the notes, so it's okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
um, I think, a lot of my customers, I think many of our listeners know about polymeric sand or know about the sand that's required between, good and bad, where the old sand or the new sand in joints of interlocking. What many people don't know about is permeable outside our industry. And we were talking before the show, we're very familiar with the term permeable, but I'm not sure that end users, gardeners, homeowners know about permeable and all of its benefits and how it's going to be the standard, right? We both can agree going forward, it's going to be more and more a standard for many different installations. So why don't you tell me a little bit about permeable?
Absolutely. No, I think you kind of nailed it on the head with, anything being a newer product, especially in an industry that has, a lot of what is training and stuff that's passed down through the ages of different, contractors, designers, vendors, partners in the space that, just help educate. So
Mhm.
with regards to this permeable, we'll call it maybe evolution or newer phase in technology, it's like anything, it's going to take time. And to kind of give it maybe a bit of an evolutionary kind of time chart, like, we go back to almost what the Romans were doing in a way where like a bit of like what was concrete sand or brick sand in between interlocking pavers, and obviously that's withstood the time in terms
Yeah.
of the beatings that has taken over the decades, centuries, etc. So we're kind of more so seeing the evolution in the past, like we'll call it century, with obviously polymeric sands being the most major recent one, and changing people's mindsets from going from doing those brick sands, concrete sands into a polymeric sand application, which had its purpose with, I would say, tighter joints, and kind of helping out with binding and keeping those surfaces more impermeable, and was a great application. But like anything, when people really learn how to use it and really like it, they start to use it for everything.
Mm.
So we've obviously seen a greater advancement in people choosing to use polymeric sands and everything, and then that's just become really the standard we look at with hardscaping. And when you mention even like our products, and people are like, oh, it's that polymeric sand, it's this sand, it's like, okay, well, like, okay, let's take a couple steps back and we'll kind
Yeah.
of discuss where our products differentiate. And that's kind of what you've been seeing. So like, to give you an idea, like our company itself is over 50 years old. The permeable hardscape division side is actually 40 years old, and was found out when people doing the floor coatings division found out it binds filler sands and aggregates. So that is kind of the start of what we call like the resin sand. And it started out with like a pre-mix bucket and a mixed product. And, fast forward, 30, 40 years, we've done a lot of R&D. And we have what is now like in our actual catalog, 7 different joining products. And kind of going back to that polymeric type application, we think there is not one product that fits into everything. So with like our resin sand products, We have everything from like patios, walkways, pool deck ratings to driveways up to about 25-ton rating. So to get into how it works with the permeable side of it, it's a very long-winded way of getting there, is that when they found out it binds this filler sands and aggregates, and what we use is a silica sand and this resin technology that we have that's proprietary to our company, is that when they bind the silica sand with the resin, it allows that joint to now become permeable. So it's really cool when we're at like our trade shows and stuff, and I always highly suggest coming checking out our booths. We're always at LOC, H&A, to kind of get people for the North American audience. But we usually always have like a little microscope on hand, and it's really cool to look at our sands on a granular level. And what you notice is they're like little beads, which is very similar to actually to our aggregate binding, but like on this like micro scale. So what happens is the water is able to kind of get through the void space and get down, which, as we kind of talked about before the call, like with the whole permeable discussions, Mother Nature's always going to win. And as we know, water and flooding and all those kind of things with weather is getting worse and worse. And all we're doing is putting more and more concrete, asphalt, impermeable surface areas everywhere. And ultimately, water needs to get down. Like that's just what it does. It's the way gravity works with it. So with trying to transition things to be more permeable, be it the municipalities creating their own standards for stormwater management, and we're seeing it more now, even on the residential level, like municipalities pushing it at houses with their initiatives, is the idea is going back to that, right? Like it's allowing water to work through not only the softscapes, which is the easy solution, but as well the hardscapes, because I don't think anyone wants to stop hardscapes from going down. It's just, okay, well, like if you're going to percentage out your backyard, for instance, how much is that percentage going to be? And where is that water going to ultimately go? Or for instance, even in your driveway, a big concern is, okay, great, like you built this beautiful driveway, but where's all that water going? And is it going to stay on your property, or is it going to overload our stormwater management systems? And we know what happens if that happens. It overloads the sewer systems, which then causes a big issue within the local like ecosystems and stuff like that, which causes issues for forestry, fisheries, like all these kind of awful things that can occur. When really, if we just look at it from the design stage of, okay, well, like if we look at permeable designs and buildups, we can really mitigate a lot of the issues that we're seeing more and more of, so that we're not, holding back the construction industry, which is a fantastic economical industry, but like it's doing it in a more sustainable effort, I think, so that we're looking at things a little bit more longer term, be it the life cycle assessment, as well as this idea of stormwater management, which I think a lot of people think is just a really cool green word, but I'm obviously biased because I live in it day to day, but there is a ton of advantages that come from the green side of it. But being permeable is really just changing the ways that we're just looking at hardscapes. And like anything, kind of going back to that original point in the evolution chart, it seems very new to people here in Canada. And obviously, as we discussed earlier, it's newer to like yourself and like kind of learning a lot more about it and what exactly it means. But in a very quick 1,000-foot level view or nutshell way of looking at it, it's just looking at how we create hardscapes into permeable surface areas. And with our product lines, we have 3 different products that we use. So jointing, bedding products, so what goes underneath pavers, astroturf, court systems, anything that really is kind of supporting a top layer surface. And then we also do aggregate binding. So within those 3 product families, we have 15 different products within them. And what we do and what we focus on is being an accessory to all of the hardscape solutions that you can look at. So loose aggregate applications, paver types, be it porcelain, natural stone, clay, concrete, like all those things we've worked with, we tested with, and we continue to do them in different designs that are not only in backyards, pool decks, driveways, walkways, but in big, like what would be like institutional, commercial kind of level projects, roof decks, really exciting projects that are just kind of, or helping revolutionize the way we look at it in terms of it, obviously being permeable, but it comes with a ton of benefits, be it maintenance, durability, life cycle assessment, the carbon footprint kind of initiative, which is also really big in hot topics right now. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying that is what permeable is for us. So obviously I talk about it a lot, so I can rant very easily.
Yes. No, I think that's great. And thank you for breaking it into those 3 categories, because I think that's, I can think of many uses of each 3 category. So let's focus on jointing for a minute. So,
Yep.
so I say polymeric sand. So really yours is a resin sand.
Correct. Yep.
Correct.
And that
Okay.
is the big way to determine, like, the kind of separate
Different.
them
Yes,
essentially. Correct.
differentiate it.
Yeah.
Right. But still, when I think so, being a girl, I think of resin, I think of jewelry, and I think I can see those, or as a mom thinking those little insects and things in resin, and that's
Yeah.
hard. They're hard.
Yeah.
So how is your resin? So it's a resin, but yet it's still permeable.
Correct.
And I know
Yeah.
we're
So
on video and audio, and it's harder to explain that, but yeah. So tell me.
what I'll do is I'll give a quick plug, I guess, to our website. We've
Okay.
hired a great marketing coordinator and team, and it's really expanded to a great user-friendly interface. So, be it your homeowner, a landscape architect, designer, contractor, someone from municipality, whatever any interest you might have, highly suggest Googling us or find it, I guess, maybe in the notes from the podcast. But it's a great experience to visually see it. Like, I know there's always different learner types. Me
Hmm.
personally, I'm more auditorial, so I love stuff like podcasts. But like you said, the visual idea is it's a great way to create that connection to it. And of course, if you ever want to come out and see our demos, which we do a lot of, so feel free to reach out if you're ever interested in those. But what I'm getting at is what you'll be able to see is the permeability effect, because we do showcase it a lot of, like, pouring jugs of water or pressure washing up to 5,000 psi, or running hoses over our surface areas, be it the jointing, the aggregate binding, or even the bedding. And you'll just see with your own eyes just how quickly that water disappears within it. And, like, to try and give it numerical values, we go anywhere from like 35 inches per hour up to 725 inches per hour just on the
Wow.
jointing scale alone when we do our testing. And to give you like a comparative, like when we look at hurricane level infiltration rates, like it's going up to like 185 inches per hour or more, which kind of is actually where the stormwater management systems mostly have their IPH testing at, so the inches per hour. So, like, it would really take a lot of flooding to overwhelm our systems, be it, it is at that higher level design
Yeah.
level that we're talking about. Because I think maybe I might be getting ahead of myself, but when we think of, permeability and when it pertains to what is permeable jointing, there is very key effects that, or variables, I would say, that play into that. So, unbeknownst probably to most people, when we think permeable pavers, we think the paver itself is actually permeable.
It's true.
There really is only one, I believe, paver on the market, which is HydroPave Company, which allows permeability through the paver itself, which is a great initiative. But when you look at other paver companies that are advertising and selling permeable pavers, so for instance, Unilock, who is a great partner of ours, they have a great permeable paver line, and how it works for them and how they use that is actually the joint width itself. So length width will obviously play a factor into it, but the joint width itself is what plays the biggest factor, because that's actually how the water is getting down. And that is where, when they do single ring infiltration testing, so SRI testing, that's what they're actually testing, is the length and width of the pavers based on the joint percentage of the whole square footage area. So obviously you get
Okay.
your pens and calculators out for this one, but
Yeah.
the idea is those variables at play was where the infiltration rate testing comes from, and like
Okay.
it's telling us how much water is going through it. So what I would, in a very layman's term way of saying, is that the bigger the joint and, like, the smaller dimension of the paver, the higher infiltration you'll get for permeability in your pavers. So if you're trying to create a really permeable area, and like you're worried about pooling, ponding, all those kind of things in your surface area, like that is the best application for it, other than, like, obviously doing something like a trench drain,
Right.
French drain, like any of those drain types, which can be a little bit more unsightly. So you're kind of playing around with that idea of where aesthetic meets performance, when
Hmm.
you're playing with the idea of doing permeable paving, especially when it pertains to paver types with our resin sand that way.
Okay. Um, so one of the things that clients, as soon as you say interlocking to, well, when I walk on site and we start talking about their hardscaping and I mention interlocking, and usually it's like, no, I don't want interlocking because I don't want weeds. So even before we get to the whole permeable part, I have to explain about the new interlock and how there's, I call them little bumpers. I know there's an official term, but and more sand can get through the joint and that type of thing. So how are, and that is how, like you said, water wins, and that's where water causes the erosion. Water causes lots of things to fail. We can see it in public spaces all over the place,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yep.
So how does your resin sand hold up to that? How hold up to the weeds?
No, it's a great question. So like if you ever felt our samples or been on site where our resin sand we being the German company as well, the parent company call it more of like a grout versus like a jointing sand.
Okay.
So the idea is like when you feel it, it feels like a mortar grout. Like you can scratch it with a nail, you
Mm.
can try to pull it out with a grout rake and you're not getting it out. Like to give you an idea, when we repair the joints if needed, or you need to address an area, say below it, like you're grind sawing it out. So the
Oh,
idea of anything breaking through it below or above is quite hard. So be it
okay.
organic growth or even ants, like, will
Oh,
have a
yeah.
tremendous time trying to break through the joints. So what we always recommend is getting a minimum inch depth down with our product. Like we have some others that can play around with 3/4 of an inch, but the standard is usually an inch down. So as long
Okay.
as you're meeting like that inch down, what happens is you're comprehensively binding the paver side to side, but as well the bedding to the top of the paver. So kind of like as you mentioned, you'll have concrete tabs and stuff in it, which is great for when you're quickly laying interlocking. But if you have an opportunity for organic growth below it, it will come up, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But with our product, what's happening is you're putting this like really very strong grout like product all the way down to the bottom. So when it's done and installed correctly, nothing's coming up from it. So kind of like how
Hmm.
you said, like, and playing to that point I mentioned earlier, like, people only understand and know what they know.
Yeah.
So when I originally got into this side of the industry from the green roof side was, you think interlocking and you think the weaving, the heaving that occurs and the weeds and the ants, all those things that are occurring on the surface area, you just think that's normal and that this happens and you accept it, where there are better standards and better products and better ways of doing buildups as well that can really prevent a lot of those issues. And to kind of further more to the point, like using a really good jointing product will help prevent that, but as well changing what is your buildup types too. So
Right.
getting away from like sand setting layers or even limestone screenings, which is kind of that
Hmm.
evolutionary chart idea of like where we've come to where we are. And what
Right.
you're seeing more now is what they call open aggregate style buildups or even permeable buildups. So it's that idea that using like a 1/4 inch chip or HPB for those who are local to the GTA, as your bedding layer product, and then using something like a 3/4 inch base below, down to your subgrade. And of course, you can add filter cloths and stuff as you see fit, especially if you're neighboring into a softscaping side section, stuff like that. But really, what that's allowing is it's taking any kind of opportunity for organic growth to occur, and have a penetrating opportunity through the pavers itself, which is, when you're thinking about the life cycle and longevity and the sedimental changes that can occur in a surface area, that really mitigates it, because not only are those products really great at self-compaction, but they really allow a ton of drainage. And anywhere where it's cold, and you probably know about frost heaving or have at
Yes.
least
Yeah.
experienced it, and you have
Hmm.
never knew that was the term for it. But
Yeah.
creating what is good void spacing allows the opportunity for water to shock freeze without causing the opportunity to heave the surface area up. So
Right.
when we see contractors following those type of build up guidelines and such, and understanding if they're going to do it permeable, especially that water has to get down somewhere, and allowing it to get in 3/4 inch clear where there's 70% void space. And if water shock freezes at 9%, like that gives it all the opportunity to heave without expanding, or sorry, to
Right.
expand without heaving it. Um, so really doing a lot of those things not only solves a lot of issues from the organic growth, but to the heaving as well, which, when you're
Hmm.
on site and you're talking to clients and they have those pain points and they talk about interlocking and they just think it's a nightmare. It's, this kind of helps them educate that there are better standards to doing it, and probably will help explain why the cost of your quote might be different, but
Yeah.
you're doing it the correct way ultimately. So
Hmm. Hmm. So there's no because yes, most contractors that at least that I work with have gone towards the open bedding base
yep.
type of thing. So that's sufficient for your product. There isn't an extra step or an extra process that is required in order to use the resin sand.
Yeah, like what we say is, we'll always educate people and say that if you are using like a dense grade, so be it limestone screening, sands and stuff, that using a permeable product is not going to be ideal for the longevity of it. It's still going to be the best product choice. It's just not in an ideal situation, which
Mm.
we understand if people are doing jointing remediation applications and they still want to put a product in, but we want to educate them. And, if it costs us the sale, so be it. We just don't want them spending money on something that can fail. But obviously we can tell them the most optimal situation, which is, always doing an open aggregate permeable system buildup type, because ultimately it's good for everything involved in the system, be it the pavers, be it the longevity of the
Yeah.
jointing, the permeability factors that, we can get away from the frost heaving, prevent the ants and the weeds, give them the maintenance benefits, all those kind of things. Those would be said requirements in terms of just having a proper build up. Simple stuff like edging is really important too. It is surprising sometimes the amount of contractors that just don't edge the paver
Yeah.
systems, because you are moving, you are walking on it, which will cause pavers to
Yeah.
move. And what we'll find is our jointing lines will crack off the paver, and it's people think it's a jointing failure, and it's like, well, no, like you just need to bind your pavers in with some type of
Right.
edging product. And there's a plethora of good products out there amongst our competitors and us to help with that as well. So what we always look at is, and during consult calls with contractors, to make sure that they're doing it to a standard where the product will work efficiently, so no one's wasting their money or time, is stuff like build up requirements, the edging requirements, and then what is structural load requirements as well, to ensure that we're putting the right products in to meet those requirements, because that is
Yeah.
where we see, usually when we're on site and if we're dealing with a failure or some type of issue, those are usually the points that we have to go back
Yeah.
to and look at and be like, okay, well, like this is where we have to fix it. Let's fix it, make the client happy again, and we can all move on. So
Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, often many times I'm called first and I do the design before the installation, but there's a lot of times where the installation's done and I'm called to just do the plants, right? To do a planting
yep,
plan, and that's so challenging because I the hardscaping is I'm just left to deal with what I'm left to deal with, right? And nothing
yep,
breaks my heart more than seeing no edging. Like I just am
oh yeah,
like, oh, this isn't gonna last, right? And
no,
and you have to subtly, and usually I don't know who installed it, and so I've kind of had to say, see if you can call them back to put down an edge, like it's good, so it puts me in a really awkward position, right? Because I'm trying to already dress up, put the pretty on the landscaping kind of thing, and yet
yeah.
I know too much, right? So I have to always say something and get myself more trouble that way. But yeah, I mean, and knowledge is power. Like that's the thing, and that's why I do the podcast, and that's why I have experts like you on, because people don't know, right? And they trust. And I'm not saying don't trust your contractor, but you need to be informed as well, right? So I think that's really my shout out to homeowners is to educate yourself and understanding the difference in prices, and it's not all about, I try to say to people too that when you get comparable quotes, and we've gone back unfortunately to the season of where people are getting five, and COVID's over, where they're not getting any they're just getting one quote, whoever answered the phone. Now they're getting, comparing, three, four, five quotes, but it's the base, think of that song. It's all about the base and what's under there, and
Yep.
that differentiates, and why one contractor is more expensive than the other for the most part. There's other variables type of thing. So yeah, so talking to your contractor about the products they're using, about the base, and if you have water issues. I think permeable is attractive to everybody, but I think anybody, and I'm wondering even, and I have a tricky backyard, and people with backyards with pools, because it's often a hardscaping challenge, especially older pools, right? Where they're trying to get new landscaping done around an old pool, dealing with the water, right? You got to keep the water away from the house, but you got to keep the water away from the pool. You got to keep the water away from the neighbor. But if you're doing permeable, right? It's a little, would it not be a little easier to manage that water?
Yeah, it gets really tricky, and it's kind of circumstantial to each project, but like the
Okay.
rule of thumb is always get the water away from the house.
Yes.
And especially when it gets towards the pools as well, like you want to just avoid water getting there. So like a lot of what we look at is opportunities to apply where is more drainage areas within the hardscape area,
Mm-hmm.
or look at underpiping it as well, like having, an actual pipe built within your 3/4 inch clear to kind of direct water somewhere else.
Okay.
And in some instances, we've heard of contractors even having to put like some form of a sub pump or something in the backyard, where it's just like you're up against it and the water has to go somewhere. And it's
Yeah.
just, depending if you're in like in a Montreal or Toronto, where, density is quite
Yeah.
tight. So we have to be quite creative in those situations, and it's all doable. It's just, the deeper you get into those situations, you're getting engineers involved in other stuff, but
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
is all doable in terms of managing it. And I think it's just something that I think all contractors, all designers, we should all look at, when doing any project, just to make sure we're looking at it, because I guarantee if it's not, it's going to come back up in an awful way, unfortunately. And
Hmm.
that's just the way the beast of the industry goes, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Do you recommend like so I mean, of course you're going to say you'd rather everybody use Romex all over their whole property kind of thing, but are there certain areas, let's say the areas under, the tricky spot at the eaves trough, right? That comes down by the driveway and there's always that ice puddle in the winter. Is it a product that you can I don't want to say spot treatment, but do you know what I mean? Like use in certain particular areas that may be more of a water issue? Is that a weird question to ask or
no, it's not weird, and definitely the biased side of me would say we
yes.
would love to use it everywhere, of course. But that's obviously, we've been in situations where we've gone impermeable to permeable. It's not like it hasn't been done.
Right.
I think the first and foremost issue you run into is just more so what is more the aesthetic
Mm,
issue of it that happens. Where the sand colors might change, but obviously functionality and performance still has to take precedent as well over those matters. So we have had instances of that. And we're just where we've done, for instance, like we've done pool decks where we've created just like a permeable kind of swale within the impermeable area, because it was almost like they kind of just had the large surface area and it kind of just swaled a bit. And they opened up the joints in these certain paver section to allow water to go through this exact point. And I think it was a matter of where the pool was a little too close to the house, and like they just had this like strip where they could direct water.
right.
And that was kind of an instance of where we went with that kind of, application and idea. And like I said, it's always doable. It's just, you just got to
Yeah.
plan and, put an
Mhm.
action into it. So
Yeah, yeah. And make sure you're using a qualified contractor, right? Then and it's
absolutely.
good to know that you're there. If your contractor doesn't know about this product, then please have them reach out, right? Because
Yep.
you've trained them, you've got a lot of information to support them. So that's really important. I wanted to also talk a bit about we talked about before this we went online on live about the aggregate binding. So this is another way for homeowners who have like may have um, you know, when it's for accessible, so anybody with a wheelchair or walker, right? It's a way to have if you have a gravel driveway or a walkway or path. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
It can bind that aggregate to make it safer for that person to use, as well as if you didn't want to invest in something like asphalt. Although you said it's a little bit more than asphalt, but it is permeable.
No, absolutely. And that's what we call like more of our permeable gravel binding
Okay.
product. So that's like one of those product families that we also sell within. So what it's doing is it's taking any kind of cleaned, washed, and dried aggregate. The client, the designer, the contractor, whoever's involved can choose the aggregate, which is actually what is going to be the color that will be showing up, of course. So it's really
Okay.
unique in the application and choices you can make. So it's very hands-on that way. What we're simply doing is providing the resin to bind it. So instead of it being loose, which will give it the chance of migration, erosion, which is a lot of the common issues we see, be it
Hmm.
maintenance, weather, leaf blowers, pressure washing, all the things, heavy
Yeah.
storm that destroy a lot of those things, which doesn't give it the ability to be ADA or AODA accessibility rating for it. So you don't see a ton of it in really park applications and stuff like that. So what we're trying to do is provide that product so it can meet those requirements and restrictions that municipalities put on any kind of hard surface area. So be it the pathways around your house, around a park, a driveway, a
Hmm.
strip of permeability for a drain application in say concrete areas. And what we do is what we focus on to make sure that happens is it's the aggregate size choice itself. So not being the color part, more so the choice of the aggregate. So we can bind anything from like an aquarium rock size, so like almost like a
Ooh.
1/16th, up to about a 1/4 inch chip is kind of where the sweet spot is to hit that like wheelchair accessibility rating
Okay.
blind
I'm
stick
thinking pea
idea.
gravel. Like, is pea gravel too big?
We find it's not really a major issue. And
Okay.
where that happens is you'll actually mix this in a cement mixer. So you take the binder and hardener, which is the resin that goes in with the aggregate, and it coats all of the aggregate. So that's kind of where the chemistry also then gets around what is the aggregate,
Okay.
and it starts to begin what is kind of the curing process. So what happens is once you mix it for 5 minutes, which coats all of the aggregate, you put it down on top of whatever is going to be that subsurface layer. So in most optimal situations, 3/4 inch clear, going back to kind of that permeable
Yeah.
base buildup idea. What you do is you then screed it out over the heights you want. So for instance, like the lowest rating we always recommend is 1.5 inches for pedestrian, 2 inches in more commercial type applications. So like boulevard streetscapes and cities. It's what we also do for a lot of our tree surrounds as well, which is fantastic. Um, so you get that depth you want. And then what you do is you just lightly kind of hand compact it with a hand trowel, which just kind of gives it that high compaction point. So the aggregates all kind of bind together and they compact together. So then what it does is it creates a very smooth surface layer. So when you do kind of be your own research, be it our website or Instagram channels, whatever you go through, you'll kind of see a very solid surface area. And then that is what gives it that ability for wheelchair wheels to go over it, blind sticks, any kind of vehicular traffic. It just goes over it without kind of breaking it or pulling on it as like shearing forces twist and churn on it. And it
Right.
also gives it the ability to prevent any trip, fall, and slip hazards as well with it. And you're kind of thinking when you look at it, like it looks wet, but it's just the way the resin kind of color enhances the
Okay.
aggregate.
All right.
And so the idea is that once water hits it, it just flies through it. Kind of
Okay.
as we mentioned before the call, like we do our lunch and learns or presentations and we put it right under a sink tap and the water just looks like it's going straight through it. Even when the Germans have tested it, it just gives us, we get a numerical value of high. They can't even put an actual number on it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it still acts as like loose aggregate in terms of permeability. It just now has a rock hard surface area. It's a great party trick if you ever have a sample to try and get your friends to break it because it is
Okay.
ridiculously hard. It is basically the strongest super glue you'll ever use, essentially, to
Mm.
do this product. So
Yeah.
it's quite amazing, and it's one we quite enjoy the most because designers and landscape architects or anyone doing the designs itself really have a great mind for designing and using it. Like we've seen people use it with glass and underlighting it with lights and creating logos in the
Mm.
hardscape areas or like mix matching colors and sizes to kind of create really unique surface areas with it. It's a really, really cool product that way.
Okay. Well, I think I need an invite to your next lunch and learn because I want to learn
Absolutely.
more about it. But
There you go.
I want our listeners to know that this is like water management is the future, really. It's not going
Absolutely.
away. So,
Yep.
the sooner that we get on board and we start switching the way we're thinking, um, so do you feel like any typical like hardscaping like patio, should really start we should start moving, or I should start moving, our contractors start moving towards using a resin sand over a polymeric sand?
I believe so. Like
Okay.
it's, at the end of the day, what we always like to think of is like kind of like what you're saying is there are these discussions with stormwater management plans, carbon neutral initiative
Hmm.
discussions, sustainability, a lot of things that are going into that. And if depending on where you are located, there's
Yeah.
actually initiatives you can get and grants that actually can go towards your construction. So getting money to do it, this is gonna sound very biased, but the best way. And what I mean the best way is really trying to pull off my biased opinion on it, but it's the life cycle assessment and what we always ask our contractors, our dealers, our designers, whoever has a hand in discussing budget, because I can talk all green initiatives till I'm blue in the face,
Yes.
and it's fantastic. But at the end of the day, people are more like at the end of the day, people do have a budget to be concerned
Yeah.
about, and we completely get that. And we're not against it, and we'll have discussions about material cost and tell people that it's not going to be the same cost as poly, which can be in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 times x just on material alone. But we ask for apples to apples comparison, and we do cost exercising no matter what level your project's at, residentially or commercially, to go through that. But getting back to the life cycle assessment, what we try to talk about are things that I think are important for the clients to be aware of. So the ability to maintain their surface areas. So, talking about pressure washing and cleaning pavers, which has not been able to be done before. So if you do that with polymeric or brick sand or even loose grit joints, you're going to blow the joints out and you're going to have to
Right.
reapply it. So there's time and material done again after the initial install. And that's, either annually or 2, 3 years or more, depending on the product and how long it has lasted, all those kind of things. But
Hmm.
you do that enough times and the rise over run is definitely going to exceed the cost of doing our product the first time, which is going to save you the headaches of having to worry about not being able to maintain it, not be able to do snow
Hmm.
removal on it, the ants in the weeds, the failures that come with other products. Just things like that, when people are aware of what's going into the cost and the dollar of their project and what they're actually buying, people will lean towards it. So what we've
Yeah.
kind of educated people on is like don't be afraid to sell it as an upgrade. Educate them on the differences of our products versus others. Discuss our warranties with that. Go into the idea of sell it as an upgrade, just like you would a fireplace or water features or lighting.
Lighting. Yeah.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
it's more dollars in the contractor's pocket, but it does ultimately make the client more happy because you know we are in the knowledge age industry, and a lot of people can go out and do their own homework, and we do get a ton of inquiries from homeowners directly asking about our products, but
Oh,
not
good.
all of them are educated in it. And if they know there's a
Mm-hmm.
better product, a lot of people will buy it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the auto industry or anywhere in the world where we've sold upgrades would ever have existed if we didn't push the threshold on
Yes.
educating and asking people to buy something that's a little bit more higher ticket, but it comes with the value. And I think
Mm-hmm.
with our product, I can guarantee it is, people will say it's more expensive, but expensive products do back up the value as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So
You get what
I
you pay
think
for, right? It comes down to that,
exactly,
right? You get what you're
exactly.
paid
That's
for.
the best way to say it.
Yeah. Can homeowners do it themselves? Like, is it, I mean, I even say polymeric sand, it's risky for homeowners to do it themselves because there is a technique and, it is a skill, right? That's what you pay for contractors for. But if there is a adept, those handy homeowners that think they can do anything, is it something that they would be able to use?
There are some quite handy homeowners out there. Like we've been surprised at the
Yeah.
level of, because what like we back in the Germany line, there is a homeowner line and a commercial line.
Okay.
And then we kind of just sell it under one line here in North America to kind of keep it a little bit more simple. But what I would say, like the premix bucket products, like if I can install it, who was, going back to my university days, being a grunt on site with the shovel and
Yeah.
walking, just doing that type of work. Like if I can do it and get it into the joints and not screw it up, I'm sure anyone can do it, including homeowners. There are steps and there are things that you need to be aware of, like water is its best friend. When we're doing the resin sands, keeping it wet is the best way to do it. So even if it's raining, that's another plus as well,
Yeah.
which extends your jobs, extends the opportunity to finish stuff later in the seasons and earlier in the season, so to speak. But to get to that point, like we do have products that homeowners can do on their own, but there are other products that we do request that they look into getting a
Yeah.
contractor to do it. And like if you choose to do it, that's completely your choice. Like at the end of the day, we kind of say like we're like a Home Depot. You come to us with your square footages and your requests, and we can recommend the product, and you can, after that, it's kind of up to you. But some obviously mistakes will void the warranties and such. But
Yeah.
the idea is, that it's a great opportunity to speak about the idea that like we have product sheets. We have a Romex Academy online that does all the products with great
Mm.
modules with videos and a test in it. We have a great YouTube channel. And then as well, we have staff on board, including myself, that can go out to site and train. If we can't be on site, we can FaceTime, we can call, we can email,
Mhm.
we can do all these things. So, we do believe in quality control, and, exceeding the service expectations are key. So we are always available to help, even if it is something simple like our premix buckets, which, is simple as wetting the surface, cut the bag, drop it down, squeegee it, broom it, and you're done kind of thing,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
we know it's kind of easy, but we do wear the blinders. So we do
Mhm.
try to make sure everyone can do it that way. So
Okay. What is you mentioned, just as we wrap up, you mentioned warranties. So what type of warranties can we let the homeowners and contractors know?
absolutely, yeah. So we didn't really get too far into like some of our other products, and maybe that's a hint at maybe another episode at some point. But
Absolutely.
nonetheless, we do have product warranties on all of our products. So with that being said, we do recommend the process. How it always works is consulting, calling ahead before you install, and the idea of going through what your buildup's looking like, that if it's the right product for the application,
Mm,
be it right aggregate choices, right jointing application, right bedding application, whatever it is you're using our product for. It's just making sure that you understand that you're making the best choice. So you're not wasting your money or time, and that and B, it doesn't void the warranty. So be it, build ups, edging, all the other things that we
yeah.
do request that you are aware of when installing and using our products. And then, of course, if you've never installed it, we always recommend call before installing, into the idea of like having one of us come out and train you. Some products are super easy to go over. Others, we do require that you have us out for the first one, especially. And it's part of our free services in terms of like when you purchase our
Okay.
products, and we provide that service. on top of all the other things we mentioned that you can find through our website or Instagram channels. But the idea is we have product warranties on everything. So happy to discuss those if there ever is an issue. And then as well, we do have a 10-year system guaranteed full buildup when you do use what is our permeable bedding product, which is a tremendous product that's trying to replace what is concrete slabs. So going back to that net zero initiative, permeability, and it gives the ability to take stuff like a porcelain paver at like 2 cm or a concrete slab like Beacon Hills type slab and make it vehicular rated. So something where the aspect ratio is off and now put it in a driveway application, which we've done and tested and have tons of projects across North America and globally with it. So, that comes with a full comprehensive 10-year warranty where we cover time and material, the contractor replace it, which also covers the cost of the paver itself as well in it. That's a more hands-on like consult training on site, final site inspection. But that's really changing the way we do a lot of what is installation methods, especially when it comes to more larger format pavers, because we're getting more away from like dry laying it to a wet laying type application, but giving it the stability and displacement protection that you want. And, we are seeing people, including yourself as a designers, kind of expanding design ideas and stuff. So like you said, we're trying to stay ahead of the curves and where people are looking at with design applications. And the amount of calls, emails I get daily, just like I'm wondering if we can do it is probably the funnest part of my job when I wake up in the morning. So we're always open to challenges, so to speak. If we haven't done it here in North America, I can guarantee you in Germany they have, and they probably have a product that we haven't even brought out yet for it. So
excellent. Well, I definitely want to have you back because I think this is, again, like I've said at the beginning of the show and throughout, this is the way of the future. There are many municipalities, Toronto being one of them, where you have to have 50% permeable on your property. 50. So, lawn, pools, that counts as, permeable, but when people are trying to do, especially small yards, trying to do a patio and trying to do a driveway and, if getting to 50%, those Toronto designers, that's why I like to stay in Durham, right? Those Toronto designers having to come up with that 50% it can be very tricky. And this is something that can really go towards helping.
Absolutely. And
helping
that's
that.
what we're always trying to look at is, how we can help with those type of permitting issues and, having discussions that we've had already with like City of Toronto, City of Halifax, Montreal, Vancouver,
across Canada,
all around here locally, Cambridge, Waterloo, Windsor, Hamilton. Green space is kind of a general way of looking at it and kind of goes back to that original discussion point with like, where is the water going? And 50-50 is kind of the quick standard of it, but allowing the hardscape area to be permeable in some municipalities that will fall under the permeable section in terms of being approved. So you can kind of not get away with more, but just have the ability to use your hardscape areas as permeable to not uphold your permit, which will, obviously help with getting more projects. So, we're happy to provide all of that information. We're a huge resource that way. We have infiltration rate testing numbers that we can do on our own that we can provide and do testing, demos, mock-ups for free, samples, all that kind of stuff to help. We're a complete resource that way in terms of helping people.
Well, that's good. That's really important too, because I think that helps educate all of us. Like, I'm happy to be educated here, and I'm happy to educate my listeners. But the more we talk about it and mention it to homeowners, and the better we'll all raise the issue and help with the solution. Because I think water always wins, like you said, right?
Oh yeah.
So
and
we've
use a
got
great I have a lot of family in Newfoundland, and use a great kind of I guess saying that they use a lot is, the rising tide only picks up everyone in the harbor. So, the idea is that, if we're all working towards the same initiative, and I have great friendships with the folks from Alliance, Technoseal, all our what would be competitors. It's a small and it's a big industry with this, but it can be like a small pond at times. And we all believe in just trying to raise the standard together because that just helps everyone, which is the end users and the clients, which is most important. So yeah, I completely believe in the support systems, the educations, all those things. And, feel free to reach out if there's anything like that has of interest, because we're always happy to have conversations like we're having today and whatever it is, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for being here. And I really do would like to chat more about it and Yeah, so I think that'd be great. And because we're doing video, maybe that you can have some, pictures or something next time. And, that might
Absolutely.
be even better for our listeners. Even though it's a podcast, it's sometimes you can find us on YouTube too. And sometimes visuals are a handy thing. So thank you very much, David, for joining me here. All these, all your Instagram and website and all that stuff will be in the show notes, everybody.
Beautiful.
So yeah, so thank you again for joining me down the garden path and educating all of us on permeable. So thank you once again for joining me.